So, for those of you just joining us, the GZDoom and Doom scene seems to be in turmoil at the moment. Now, for anyone that's not clued up to the situation, we're going to have a chat about our opinions on it. But the general gist of it is that, as we know, GZDoom is a updated, modernized version of the Doom engine. But unfortunately, it would seem that the person in charge of that seems to be quite I don't want to say names, but they're not being a collaborator and being rather territorial about it. They've made some decisions recently that have caused controversy within the actual scene of GZDoom itself, to the point where people have openly stated that they are tired of dealing with this person shit, and they are creating a new fork of it. The irony being that this person said, if you don't like what I'm doing, go create your own fork. So people went and did just that. It turns out, actually, that majority of GZDoom developers seem to have almost immediately jumped ship and are now embracing the new format, which I first heard about this controversy. Coven's dead. Is it Nash? I believe Mahandes? I always feel like I'm going to mispronounce it. Mentioned it on Blue Sky, so I read into it. What's happened is that the developer of GZDoom essentially has put ChatGPT generated code into the actual, the language of it themselves, and it created controversy because all of the developers were like, well, now that opens us out to copyright issues. What if something happens where AI and copyright is regulated? That now affects any game that is created or updated with GZDoom. So we're just going to have a little chat in regards about this. So in terms of, gentlemen, for your opinions on this, do you think that the developer behind GZDoom, do you think that they were right to use ChatGPT to create something like this? Going from left to right, let's start with Medium.
Yeah, the specifics are a little fuzzy to me, but in general, ChatGPT is usually like the least offensive of the AI strains. It's more like generative AI that like scrapes much more specifically like art. So like something people created to be viewed in a certain way and have a certain effect. Whereas it's pretty easy to tell like if something is truthful or useful. Like you can oftentimes check what, like for instance, if you're creating resumes with a chat GPT, those kinds of things. As long as you're kind of using it in that capacity, I can see where it would be easy to just go, all right, I can get a pretty good understanding of whether I'm doing something that is both like legal and helpful and like moral or whatever in my usage of AI.
Yeah.
So like if it was something a little bit more like generative AI does, where it scrapes a bunch of existing stuff that isn't just like, that's a good idea. It's not so abstract. It's literally like on screen. Yeah, I don't just if that's all that's being done here, I think that probably isn't the biggest deal, because it can be really easy. Just go anything AI, I'm done, I'm out.
Yeah.
I think that would be an overreaction to do it just to Chat GPT. But again, the specifics of it may be a little bit more damning.
Yeah. The problem, of course, is that if there is regulation, it does affect every existing every ChatGPT game, GZDoom game, and with any future updates, it does as well. But it would appear, from my perspective, and I want to give a shout out to Kirk Alex, his State of the Boom video was very educational on the subject as well. So anyone watching this, go watch his video on it as well. If you've made a game in GZDoom right now, do you think that people are going to be, scared about it? What if we get regulated into non-existence? Now, what if support for everything? He literally said to people, if you don't like what I'm doing, basically the gist of it, piss off. So they decided to piss off, What kind of person have you got to be to create a community where that happens, Deadforge, what do you think about it? If you were a developer right now, how would you be feeling?
Just kind of like Medium, the specifics of the whole situation involving like to what extent ChatGPT is being used, I guess can really sway
I believe it was
the
code
way that I'm feeling about it or the way anybody's feeling about it. Yeah. He was just putting like normal code into it.
It was ChatGPT generated code that was put in there. Yeah. So basically, it's part of the
So
build
I guess
of GZDoom now.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're generating generating code using ChatGPT, which kind of like what Medium said was, it's kind of like the lesser evil kind of situation with that. But I mean, if ChatGPT, if they did something where there's like copyright because you're using ChatGPT, you know what I mean? Like it's because it's a service type of thing, then obviously there's going to be issues because money's going to have to be paid, like extra money on GZDoom for creating these things to whatever extent that it is required. So I think that generating the code is not inherently a bad thing as long as, it's being done in a, normal way, that you're, whatever. But I think that for developers in the future or anybody still developing on it, if they did pass anything copyright related towards ChatGPT, then of course that would be an issue because then they're going to have to back pay this money or they're going to have to like owe money. There's going to be a whole legal thing in it. And so I think it's just it sounds like a shit show overall. I think that's the best way to put it. And I think that the developer behind GZDoom being so toxic and confrontational and very defensive in a negative kind of way to the point of pushing people away from using it to the point that they have to go and do their own, amalgamation of it that's completely separate. I think one is probably good for those doing that because then that keeps, freedom in the hands of somebody who may not be using ChatGPT, who may not be taking those risks so haphazardly. And I think that, in the long run, I think that AI is one of those things where eventually it's going to be used for a lot of things, and it's going to be used to speed up a lot of things. So I don't think that
say whether people
necessarily
like it
is awful in every scenario, but I do think that when it comes to developing a game that's using something like that is not owned by the person who created the engine or owned by any developer, that's an issue because that's like an extra thing that needs to be paid for, that there's a whole set of circumstances around. So yeah, I mean, overall, I guess the best answer to the whole thing is just it's a shit show, and it just doesn't seem to be, it's not okay in the sense of like the way that they are, going about this scenario outside of the AI aspect. It sounds like they're being kind of like a Randy Pitchford.
It seems a bit like when you're making a YouTube video and you're like worried about using a soundtrack that might be copyrighted in the future kind of idea. I can empathize with it in that regard. If it's more of a, like, this is just sort of a dumb idea to unnecessarily, like, you're not future-proofing your stuff, right? If you're doing it that way, I guess is the idea.
Well, it shouldn't have been done really unless the law is settled on the subject, because he has put people's work in danger.
Well, I guess the idea is that is it like on the cusp of a ruling or something? Or you just assume
I don't know
happen regardless because it's...
There are so many... A lot of people are saying that essentially AI falls under fair use. So just as us as YouTubers, we would take somebody else's gameplay or something, we would modify it, and then put it out, and then say, this is my product. What people are saying is that AI is essentially the same thing. It scrapes it, but you use it to generate something that you can claim as your own. The problem is that you can't claim copyright on anything AI generated. It has to be created by a human being to be able to be copyrighted. So, and with GZDoom having this was it 2017 or something, it gained a public license, which is why you saw all the GZDoom games coming out in the last few years. It just kind of puts everything in jeopardy, essentially. But the thing that gets to me is that there is a right way and a wrong way to do things. And if people bring to you intelligence and criticism and say that this is what has happened, this is what could happen, you can put your hands up and be like, okay, cool, I hear where you're coming from. Let me change things around and thank you for educating me. But again, without trying to point fingers at someone, I don't know the guy personally, Graf. He from everything that I've read, he seems to be very territorial and confrontational about GZDoom as his thing, and that essentially all things need to go through him and his approval. But you mentioned before I cut you off, actually. I cut you off while you were talking about something, but I'll let you finish that train of thought. But I know there's been some YouTube AI issues that you've been talking about as well, so I don't know if you want to go into that as well.